But hello and welcome to tonight's discussion of the films of Jordan Peele as part of the 2020 WCI Film Festival and Lecture Series, Monsters at the Movies. I'm Ray Malstock, a lecturer in the Writing and Critical Inquiry program at the University at Albany and chair of the Film Festival. We have a lot to celebrate tonight. I'd like to start by thanking one of our recent graduates, Joycelyn Darko, for her powerful and thought-provoking introductions to the films. We're extremely proud of our students at UAlbany, and we like to take opportunities like the WCI Film Festival to celebrate their work and contributions to our on and off campus communities. So thank you again, Joy, for being part of this event. You can find more information about Joy and her new role as public relations intern at IMG in the description to her introductory videos. This film festival is pretty special for us. It's our 5th anniversary. When we started the WCI Film Festival and Lecture Series, it was with the aim of bringing together the UAlbany and Capital District communities in a shared inquiry and celebration of some of the most popular trends and genres in cinema. Since our first festival in 2016, we have shown 40 films spanning 10 decades and representing 13 nations, including 5 made right here in Albany. We have established over 30 on and off campus community partnerships, and we have occasion to celebrate our newest tonight with Acting with Aaron and its founder and director, Aaron Moore. Aaron Moore is an actor, writer, and theater educator. Through his organization, he teaches acting, writing, and directing, produces and performs, but he does more than just that. Acting with Aaron uses theater to teach meditation and public speaking, to offer anger outlets, and to teach the importance of silliness, among other things. A creative force and leader in the arts and humanities in the Capital Region, under his direction, Acting with Aaron partners with organizations to celebrate Black and Brown talent in and around Albany. We can look forward to his upcoming productions, Black to Broadway, a fundraiser for Acting with Aaron, and The Sunset Limited. You can find information to get in touch with Aaron and to donate to his incredible organization in the trailer video for tonight's discussion. And we hope you will all participate in these discussions. Leave your cameras on or off, however you feel most comfortable. Please make use of the chat and the hand-raising options on Zoom so we can make sure everyone is heard. And before you sign off, please leave your names in the chat, including all those people who might be sharing your single screen. So Aaron, I'd like to start us off with a question for you. To a certain extent, horror and monster narratives, at least the good ones, already have elements of symbolism, allegory, and metaphor, layering meaning on top of meaning. Peele uses this to his advantage, further layering meaning onto his monsters, racial, political, and gender arguments seeming to happen all at once. In his interviews and annotations, he often mentions as well a meta level to his films. For instance, when she overflows Chris's iced tea in Get Out, Peele notes that, quote, Georgina is in the sunken place, and the people who are trapped in the sunken place are watching the same movie we're watching. They are screaming from a place where they can't be heard. This moment in the film speaks to slavery, to racism, to misogyny, and in the quote he adds to it the experience of horror audiences screaming unheard, to a would-be victim climbing the stairs rather than running away, and to his own experience as a Black fan of the genre unrepresented on the screen. His films offer him a mode to express these truths, and the idea makes it into his films in these meta moments. Another example, in Us, there's a powerful dance sequence, Red and Adelaide performing solos that, through editing, become a duet. This is a pivotal scene. If not for the dance, the rest of the plot would never have a chance to unfold. The dance provides a pathway to freedom. You and Peele might have something in common here. In the article in The Collective, Jamil Mosley talks about your own advocacy work through Acting with Aaron and how you see theater as a form of empowerment, helping your students and actors to gain confidence, to improve public speaking, manage stress, and confront their own emotions. In the interview, which I have linked in the chat for Zoom, in the interview you talk about your rage at an industry that consistently pushes aside Black talent and how your own work seeks to remedy that. Can you speak to us for a moment about how this rage and your passion to change the industry, especially here in Albany, are expressed through your art?
Sure. I got to say that it's interesting how, again, you were speaking about layers and how the many layers of Jordan Peele has put into the film Get Out. And how interesting that it was through horror, where through horror, it is such, can be connected to a nightmare and and whatnot, and how it is such a horror where voices do become trapped in the sunken place, or trapped or unheard in the sunken place. And it is, and it does become a nightmare almost. And I say that to connect to the answer to your question is um, the nightmare of not being able to just express oneself through any level of art, visual art, painting, photography, um, etc., and then also connecting to performance art. Is something that is, I believe, is one of the pivotal elements of what it is to be human. And I believe racism is something that has infected almost, if not all, if not every single layer of infrastructure that we hold dear to us. Finance, education, food, health and wellness, the justice system, the political system, et cetera, et cetera. Also, and then one major find is the entertainment world, and connecting to the art world. And I think uh, art, I wrote a quote a few days ago, actually, so this kind of fits into it, that art is the language that we use to describe our conversations with God, and whoever you deem to be that, um, ever, whoever you deem to be that, excuse me. And to deny that to someone in general is just nightmarish. To deny it due to the color of their skin is just absurd. And I think it's extremely important to give people the ability to express themselves, and to express themselves through art, because again, art is something we literally take from another world and bring it to our world. We take it from the world of our imagination and the world of our dreams and our emotions, and we make something that is sort of that is nothing, and we create something out of that, something that brings connection, something that brings out hidden emotions, something that binds us, that unifies us, that speaks to us, that inspires us. I think it's extremely important for that to be a platform to everybody. And I especially feel the way just Black people in general, how our voices have been taken from us for hundreds and hundreds of years, how through every single guise that has taken. I think it's especially important now that we have access to express our art without any sort of um, bans or control or sort of transformation to something that is unrecognizable to us, or something that isn't having to put in the sunken place for it to be recognized. And I also think that was a key element in the idea of what the sunken place was, where you can, I feel, having seen the film, having to be forced into the sunken place, but also having to volunteer yourself for it in order to walk amongst uh, people every day at work, social gatherings, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it was, I think that art is important to Black people because it shows and it expresses our history, our wants, our needs, our culture, the vastness of our culture, and just on the macro scale of our culture. And I think that should be shown and expressed without any bounds or bans, or without any sort of mutation to it.
That's wonderful. We have a lot of actors and some dancers in the audience.
Huh.
Anyone else want to speak to this experience in their lives? All right. I think that's such a beautiful quote, Aaron, using art as a way to express your relationship with God and as a language to communicate with God. That's really beautiful.
Thank you.
I think it's something that Jordan Peele would actually really agree with as well. In the annotations to the Get Out screenplay, which I mentioned this before we started, but a lot of the quotes that I'll be using tonight come from Jordan Peele's annotations to the Get Out screenplay. It's readily available. There's some wonderful information here, as well as some interviews that he's given. In the annotations to the Get Out screenplay, he questions again and again if he's trivializing his subject matter, which he describes with a quote by Saidiya Hartman as the afterlife of slavery. By filtering it through the horror genre, he wonders if he's actually trivializing it. But the critical attention and the honors that his films have received would indicate perhaps the opposite, that one of the virtues of his work is the power that and the gravity that horror gives to this subject. There's a long tradition of rendering trauma, evil, and perseverance through the tropes of monster narratives. So I'd like to hear from you, Aaron, and from our audience what you all think. Is horror trivializing Peele's subjects, or does it give him power and voice by approaching them through the displacement and the confrontation that horror allows us?
Hmm. Well, it's interesting because I often ask that of myself too when when I write characters, um, to when I write the characters down to any one of my plays. In the world we live in, unfortunately, expression of, especially in the entertainment world, going back to that, the needs and wants of Black people have to be and and have been shown to have the guises of, I'm going to make up a word, so forgive me, gimmickry. So that's a new made up word for it. Yeah, but through the eyes of gimmick, of having to, it has to, like, we can understand you or we can hear you, but it has to be, through the blindfold of comedy or being the blindfold of this and et cetera, et cetera. And that's the way for people to connect. I do think, as I said before, I think it was very ingenious to do horror to be that, to describe what these characters are going through, and also just to connect it to the horror of what Black people are going through on an everyday basis. I remember sitting sitting down. I think it was in my home, and I remember seeing the trailer for Get Out. I remember it was on Facebook, and it was Jordan Peele, and I knew Jordan Peele from Key and Peele and from his like comedy and stuff. So I was like, "Wow, a horror movie from Jordan Peele? Okay, let me check this out." And instantly, I think like in the first 4 seconds, I knew exactly what it was about, and I remember clapping, going, "Yes, yes, yes, this is real. This is a real thing." This is real. This happens. And I remember I shared it. I remember, and within like 30 minutes, going back to my Facebook page and seeing a group of my friends, my Black friends, share it too, and saying around the same thing that I was saying, or I wrote in my post, like, "Yo, this is it." Like, being the one Black person within, a sea of whiteness is a thing. It's scary sometimes, and it's uncomfortable, and it's suspenseful, and it's just a place that we're forced to be at many times, and it's something that we have come accustomed to. But like I said, that comfortability is there, almost close to horror. So I remember seeing that, going, "Wow, like this is great," and I instantly made that connection with the character, with the story, and and another thing I felt was relief. And I was like, wow, a horror movie where we don't have to fit in stereotypical Black roles, where the Black person is the star, where it's a genuine uh, story, just that, or just the basic surface story is a genuine story that we all can relate to, and it's written directed by a Black person. That it's like, you ever play Tetris and like the pieces come, and then that feeling when you get that piece right where it fits and right where it needs to be. That's the feeling I can describe of how I felt watching that, going like, just whew, finally. Like, it's not like these big stereotypical roles where, there's one Black person, they have these like unobtainable, unbelievable, almost menstrual storylines, where, like, the one Black person from the hood only speaks Ebonics, curses all the time, et cetera, et cetera. And it wasn't that. And I was like, wow, this is such a relief. So I think that, you know, I think when it doesn't fit in those guises, I think that it doesn't have to be in that realm of gimmickry. It doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be a gimmick to snap us in. The story does it. And the story is enough. And the story is there for us to connect to. And whether it is a horror film or a comedy, a drama, or, et cetera, et cetera, as long as the story is genuine. The story is genuine. The characters are genuine. They have an a lasting effect instead of a short, gimmick. I think that, that's where the genuineness is, if I can say that. Um, but that's what I felt, and I'm very open to going, oh, geez, okay, not another one, or like, that. And like I said, when I saw that trailer, and when I saw the movie, even when I saw the movie, that feeling was still there.
I wonder if part of that relief in the horror genre is he's also the hero. He does
Right.
prevail at the end. Julia, you had your hand up. Is there anything you'd like to add?
I was gonna say, I guess it might be different depending on who's watching, because there are some people that would think that horror might trivialize it. People that don't really understand the feeling might say, oh, they're making it out to be worse than it is. But the people that have lived through it might say, I understand that, as Mr. Moore said. Uh, they might agree with it and say, well, this is doing a really good job of displaying what I feel and my emotions, and on a larger scale.
Okay, Kiara?
Yeah, I think that sometimes horror can really be like looked down upon as a genre for not being able to talk about deeper topics or things like that. So when a movie comes along like this and it actually has a proper commentary about something that's important, I think it resonates more with the audience, and it doesn't really trivialize it. I think it resonates more, I guess, yeah.
I wonder if Jordan Peele feels this way because he comes from a comedian background. Because comics kind of like heckle, they kind of make things funny, but I also feel like this is like a satirical horror film, so it's kind of like a criticizing. It just kind of criticizes the nature of things rather. So I don't think it's necessarily trivializing things, but it's just showing things from another perspective, I guess.
We have a few more hands raised. Jason?
Hi, how you doing? I had a question for Mr. Moore.
Sure.
Just listening, you're already adding perspective to my brain. Just like I never thought about the film with that much depth, I guess, in terms of how it parallels like the life of the average Black person. And I was wondering if you would want to share any accounts that you have of any times where I guess were suppressed in some way because of the color of your skin.
Jason, is it?
Yeah.
Jason, thank you for that question. Thank you. I'll say this. I'll say this. The world itself is suppressed towards Black people enough where me telling a story of one time where I was wouldn't do it justice, or wouldn't do it justice, and it wouldn't pay respect to just the vast amount of it. And then we kind of get into the world of like, you know, telling our story. Is it to telling our story to describe one thing out of a sea of things, or out of a macro of experiences and situations and issues? So I'll say, just at the moment, unfortunately, that one story wouldn't cover it, if that makes sense. I'll say that. But thank you for the question. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the response.
Aaron, we have a few more hands raised, but when I was reading the interview that I linked in our chat, you actually mentioned, to sort of speak a little bit to Jason's observation about your experiences in the theater world as being the sort of formation point for acting with Aaron.
Mm-hmm.
Is there maybe something there that can direct Jason's question towards your experience of starting acting with Aaron because of your experiences as an actor?
Sure. So in connecting it, so as looking from the audience perspective now to the person flipping it to the person behind, or persons behind the camera, you know, I've been on stage and in film. You tend to get trapped in certain boxes. Well, not certain, a box. And the box of being a Black actor, Black director, Black playwright, Black, you know, whatever. And you tend to get, and I kind of jumped head first into the realm of plays and film. I got in those situations where it was, that stuff was starting to come up, where I was auditioning for films and movies, and I would get responses from either the director or casting directors or producers to say, well, can you have, and these are real, what I'm going to say, these are real things that was said to me. Can you give it like a hip-hop-y effect? Can you give it like a, you know, like an urban feel to it? We're looking for like, can you like jazz it up? Can you offer, what was that? What was it? Can you offer, can you like add a little bit of ebonics into that one sentence or something like that? And doing voice roles, you know, I did a audition for a voice role for a video game, and this is what I got. They were like, well, we're going to go in a different direction, and it's only because your voice, it's very melodic for a Black voice, so it's not really Black enough, and it's not really white enough, so it's right in the middle. So just something to think about. So that was like supposed to be good advice for me. So, and bringing it back to just those personal reasons for myself, and then talking to other Black actors that were just, you know, going out there trying to get work, trying to get roles. It was the same thing, and it was, well, you know, they're looking for all white cast, or they're doing another all, you know, mostly white or all white play, or they're doing a play and I'm in it, but I'm playing the slave, or I'm playing the help, or I'm playing the hired, etc. You know, fill in the blank. And a lot of people were, you know, coming to me were like, you know, you write great stuff, or you're a really great director. Why don't you do something? You should do something. Or they would always, if you do something, let me know, or let me be in it, because I know I'd rather do something you're doing, no matter how big or small, than go out and do the same thing over and over again. So it was just hitting the same tired beat over and over and over and over again. Like a lot of other Black actors, where it was like we were playing the same thing. We're doing the same thing over and over and over again, and I'm just really tired of doing it. And so it kind of formulated from that, and kind of seeing, well, there's a lot of great stories out there that should be told, or like fictional stories, non-fictional stories of like many great Black people, and we're only getting like this micro version of it, like slavery, civil rights, and then like gang and gun violence. And if it's kind of like one of those three tracks, and it's only like this much of our history, and we only, and you know, it's at a vastness of it, and we only cover this much. So that was one of the major reasons where people were coming to me tired of being in that small portion and wanting more for themselves, wanting to do fantasy things and science fiction things and horror things and stuff like that. So that was a major portion of why acting with Aaron got started.
Thank you. That's a really good answer. I
Yeah.
really value perspective, and I think it's hard for everybody to put themselves into other people's shoes without perspective. And you know, I think that made it really clear. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. No problem, Jason.
Ashley?
So I just wanted to quickly add that I was so glad to see that Daniel's character survived throughout the entire movie, because typically like in other movies that have Black actors, they're usually like the first ones to get killed. So I was just glad to see that.
The first ones, and and like we die the worst.
Yep.
And that's something too. It's like we're the first and we die the worst.
Yeah.
Somebody, a director friend of mine said that when he talks about Black people in horror movies, he goes, we're the first and we die the worst. And it's true, it is. And yeah, it's such a relief to see where it was like, I don't know if there's a Facebook group called it's like Black Characters in Fantasy, and all the month of October for Halloween they're listing all the Black people that survive in horror movies, and they're give them like a post form. And like, I don't know if anybody saw the Freddy Krueger Nightmare on Elm Street movies, but that was like the first time I ever saw a Black person survive in a horror movie was a Freddy Krueger movie, and like made it to the end. And I remember being little, like really young, seeing it and going like, what? He lived? Like to this day now, and like still thinking about that is just like gives me like chills, like wow, this is really crazy. So so just something that I noticed and people were talking about as well. So, but yeah, it's we die first, and it's always the worst.
Susan?
I'm just wondering. I have not seen Get It Out in its entirety yet. I've watched pieces here and there. I catch it on TV, but I'm wondering if one of the reasons Peele used the horror genre, which is notoriously a white genre, if you think about it. Even in Romero's Night of the Living Dead, there was a Black zombie, and it was like a big deal. But I'm wondering if he picked the horror genre because people tend to gravitate towards that, and in order to get his message across, he needed a medium that the most people would go see, whether they were Black or Asian or white or whatever. And then his second one, Us, he used that as just a continuation of, okay, here's a movie that showcases Black actors doing what they do best in a genre that we don't normally see them surviving in or making it to the end. So I'm wondering if that was one of his motivations for entering into the horror genre. And I'm wondering what you think about that, Mr. Moore.
Well, I do know that that Jordan is a huge fan of horror. And I remember in an article he wrote that he was, before, I think, I'm sure Get Out was like in his mind, or if not written already, but I know he was like really frustrated where, as you were saying, for horror films, Black people aren't key characters in horror films. And I know that was something he was tired of seeing, that that Black people weren't respectfully represented in horror films. And I know that's something that he wanted to cure because he was a fan of horror films as well. And I think I really love the fact that stories, or not stories, but the fact that sort of crucial messages get hidden into things. And I really love the fact where the director and the writer come together to allow the audience to kind of connect to that. Even though Get Out was obvious, there was like an obvious message there for white people, and like hidden messages for Black people is, and you know, other than the fact that we deserve to be main stars in all films in general, especially horror films as well. So I really love the fact that they're like hidden gems along the way. Like, for example, when he is at the party and he goes to the other, this is when the other Black guy that's there has already been, you know, medically possessed by the woman's husband. And he goes out to say, hey, you know, hey man, like he says something like, I'm glad to see another brother here, or something along the lines of that. That was a message for, like, that's something, again, that's what I saw that in the trailer, and that was something I connected to, because that's something that's real. Whenever, and any Black people on here, you can, you know, please feel free to speak up. But whenever if we notice there's another Black person wherever we are, and it's like majority white, that's the first we kind of hone in, like, okay, it's not just me, or okay, there's other people here. Okay, I got it, or I'm good, or like that's the kind of, we make a beeline towards them to introduce ourselves, say hello, say, hey, I see you, you see me, like we're here, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of I feel to be an example of that. Well, thank you for that question.
Max, before we get to your question, I just want to jump in with a quote from Peele about this exact subject. Again, this comes from the annotated screenplay of Get Out. And this is a little bit long, so bear with me. He said, I came to this movie thinking I'm going to give Black audiences the horror movie they want, but they're not getting. It's going to be a postmodern commentary on the state of horror itself. Scream for Black people. This film is about the voicelessness that we endure when we're in the theater watching the screen, not having any control over what's happening in the plot. We're put in this dark room and there's almost no representation of us on that screen to connect with. If I could do my part to alleviate the lack of representation, it would be a good thing, because Black audiences are not given the opportunity to work through our fears and pain in this way nearly enough. Obviously, there's a precedent for Black horror cinema, but not one that's really supported by the industry and by Hollywood. So he speaks elsewhere about that very universal experience of screaming at the screen, don't go up the stairs, right? This is a very common emotion that horror audiences go through, but he then again layers on top of that his own experiences. And he's a true fan of the genre, mentioning over and over again movies like Rosemary's Baby, like Night of the Living Dead, even Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, right? All of these films that influence this. And one of the things he's spoken about is how monsters represent the other. Right, and we talk about this in my classes on monsters, that the monster is the thing that doesn't fit. In this film, we get that shift, and he's always playing with that genre, that the outsider in this dinner party is actually our hero, not our monster. And the things that fit are actually the monstrous entities itself. So he's both playing homage to the horror genre and turning it on its head in these incredibly postmodern, intelligent, layered ways that I think really do resonate for all of these reasons, and probably dozens more that we're not even gonna get to touch on tonight. So Max, you had a question.
It wasn't so much a question. Well, I mean, one thing I noticed is that, like, it was just really satisfying to see all the racists die. And like that, it reminded me of the movie, I don't know if you've ever seen it, Django Unchained. You know, it's like usually I feel bad even when bad guys die, but there's something about racists, I don't know why, but it's just so satisfying to see those characters die.
Well, I hope you do know why. I think that they are, you know, bad guys. No, but I think I remember I saw the film in theaters twice, and then I saw it. It was streaming, and then I bought the DVD because it was streaming for like on Amazon Prime for a while, but then it stopped. So I bought the DVD. Yeah, no, it is definitely, it was definitely, I think there was a lot of being satisfied in that film for like many reasons. As I was saying earlier, just the character choice and the premise was one. You know, the people getting their just desserts was one. The relief knowing that is, you know, the ending was one. So I think there's a lot of key moments in there that kind of just kind of fit together and kind of give off that feeling um, of being satisfied. And I think that's kind of its effect, the film's effect as well. Where there's a lot of people being satisfied in there. So,
Jason?
Yeah, I actually really enjoy that movie. I love Quentin Tarantino in general, and you know, as soon as Max brought that up, it made me just think about Samuel L. Jackson's character, who is a black man who hates black people, and
mhm.
I don't know if he, I don't, I'm not sure if he really pretends he's white, but he, I don't know. It's just it's really bizarre, and I remember his death at the end of the movie was a very satisfying one, and it was just one of the most complex and intriguing, but like impossible to understand characters I've ever seen in a movie.
Hmm. Yeah, in the film Samuel Jackson. Yeah, Samuel. Those who know Samuel Jackson in the film Django Unchained, uh, it plays one of the bad guys, and it's a sort of historical role as sort of there was like the field Negro and house Negro, or field slave or house slave, and the field slave, you know, were the more rebellious. They were physically they were the larger, more male, darker. Um, you know, beginning slave. You know, if you were just brought or new to the plantation, or if you were just bought, you were a field slave. You were out in the field picking cotton, picking the tobacco. You know, if you were more light skinned, predominantly more women, older slaves were in the house. But if you were in the house, you were treated nicer, right? You got the better hand-me-down clothing. You got the better scraps from the table. You got to sleep on warmer, comfortable bed, you know, bed clothing. So over time, a lot of slaves sort of adjusted to that life where, you know, if we treated master well, if we made sure, you know, if we made sure that master was good and we treat master right, master gonna treat us right. We gonna be in the big house. They call it the big house. We gonna be, you know, he's gonna give us the bigger food, the more food. He's gonna treat the better clothing, et cetera, et cetera. You know, back, you know, they would say things like we a lot to show that they were always with their master. So if the master was sick, they say, "Oh, we sick, boss." Or if the master was hungry, "Oh, we hungry. Oh, I'll bring you something to eat." Master was tired, they say, "We tired." "Okay, we tired," to show their dedication and loyalty to their masters, as long as they get the you know better life than like the field hands had. And become part of that just became, you know, that whole, what's the name of the syndrome where you get accustomed to your captors or your kidnappers? A lot of slaves have. There's a great book by right, yeah, Stockhouse syndrome. There's a great book called um, uh, I'm gonna mess it up, but it's like around the name, post-traumatic slave disorder or post-traumatic slave syndrome, and it talks about that effect leading to being passed down to generation to generation to generation to generation, even now to modern times, by Dr. Joyce. Her last name's going to escape me, but if you type all that in and type Dr. Joyce, it'll come up. But it talks about that connecting to Samuel L. Jackson's character. You know, so just that came from a very historical key slave identity and slave role that played in real life that some people still, you know, and that kind of connects back to the sunken place, right? Where you have to conform yourself and transform in yourself physically, mentally, emotionally to get the better life, right? To get get the benefits, to get, you know, the better things.
Lauren had a question.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jason.
It's just another example of great perspective, and it's like I don't know. I feel like it's just hard to, think about things from that perspective, being white and not really understanding those things fully. And I just really appreciate all this insight.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad.
Lauren?
Yeah. I had a question I'd like to ask Mr. Moore. So I remember when this movie first came out and people's reactions, and also his movie Us, when it first came out, people's reactions to like an all-black cast, more like with Us, but I heard it with this one too. Just even people in my family, so I mean, I'm black and white biracial, and I'm more
Mhm.
lighter skinned, but they
Mhm.
always, make comments, certain people in my family, about, I remember they said, well, why does it have to be an all black cast? Black people are just trying to separate themselves even more. And it's like, I tell them, but you're okay watching a movie with a full white cast, and they don't know what to say to that. I just want to get, what would what would you say to that type of comment to just further educate or just show like why it matters? Because it's very important, and especially being especially in Us too, in and Get Out, the main character is dark skin, like you were saying earlier about light skins being very more favorited rather than dark skinned black people. So I just want to get your opinion on that.
Sure. Well, the first thing I would say is if you enjoy the movie, watch the movie. Despite no matter what anybody says, family, friends, partner, etc. If you enjoy the movie, and that's just anything, if you enjoy something, do it. Watch it. Love it. And don't let what anybody else's opinion affect that. I mean, you can, if that's something that you and enjoy doing. The second thing, when people say that, I think you had a really great response. It's like, well, why did you, out of all these horror movies, where like the many years of horror movies of the horror genre that were white, how come this conversation never came up? How come, how come there's so many movies with white people? I don't understand. How come there's not any movies with black people in it? I don't like why, and that's so peculiar. Like that was like, it's always like the first thing people go to is like, why they have to be all black? And it's like, well, for you to say that now and not to say how come they have to be all white, like all the time. And I rarely hear that, and it's like, so like, what do you mean by that? And they go, well, I'm just saying it's not that. I'm like, it always goes back to racism. And it's sort of that racism is sort of this taboo thing where nobody wants to be it, but most people are, and it's sort of, and there's this thing of like people get into like good racist, bad racist, or new racist, old racist, and things like that. I'm like, it is what it is. If you are able to connect to that and not to not to this, then that's what it is. And it's okay. You can still love people. You can still like people. You can still, however connection, strong or not, you want to have with somebody. It's completely fine. But calling them out, doing exactly what you did, calling them out and say out and proudly, like, hey, all these years of like, why is this a conversation that we're having? I don't understand. Like, we're going to see this movie. It looks like a great movie. Why does it have to be? Why is it all black? Or talk about it. Say, like, I'm glad that it's all black. I'm glad that black actors, black people can see a horror film that's about them and that's starring them and that's written, directed by one of them. And to see that, I'm happy that they have that. Talk about it. Bring it up. I think the worst, people think, a lot of people think when it comes to racism, they think it's what the person says is the worst thing about it. But no, the worst thing is what the person hears and doesn't say. So I think exactly what you said, I think that's a great response. Talking about it, bring it up, and know that you are black. No matter how light your skin is or how dark your skin is, or you are black, and say, hey, that offends me when you talk like that. to me, or when you say that around me, or you feel comfortable saying that around me, that even that, you know, it makes me feel even worse. If it does, speak on it. Say how it makes you feel. Say why you don't, you know, like if you're going to continue to talk like that, I don't want to be around you. Or just, it's enjoy the movie. I always say when it comes to racist conversations and people say, oh, well, it's from a family member, or it's from a friend, or it's from a partner, I always say, talk about it. That's the best thing you can do. If something hurt you, talk about it, right? If you cut yourself, you begin, you know, you begin on the journey to mending that cut. That's what racism is. It's a deep cut. If you're sick, you begin regimens to make yourself not sick. Same thing with racism. If something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't right. Let's bring it up. Say, you know, why wasn't? How come you don't say that when you watch Harry Potter and you watch this or that or this or that, and like there's no black people, and now all of a sudden, like quiet, then, you know, now that there's black people, it's, oh, well, you know, this is that. That's the best thing I can say to you, is just bring it up, talk about it, bring it up. No matter how uncomfortable it is, no matter how much they groan and complain, talk about it.
That's great advice on so many
Thank
fronts.
you.
We have a number of hands raised. We'll do Giacomo, Rick, Jason, and Kiara. And there's no one who could have played those roles as well as Lupita Nyong'o.
Right.
She's such a talent. So Giacomo.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Malstock. Mr. Moore, thank you for everything that you're offering right now, and wonderful discussion over here. I'm enjoying every minute of it.
Sure.
I'm a novelist, and I'm writing my first horror right now. And it's going to be starring 2 African Americans, one of them an actual figure from 100 years ago. And in regards to everything that you just said, I am very aware that I'm going to have a blind spot 400 years old when it comes to understanding slavery. The best I can do is, as a white person, write this in a way that does not repeat as many pitfalls as I mean, basically, what's the best advice you can give me on how to write this horror right now in a way that does not contribute to the problem with horror right now?
Sure. Well, that's really great, and I'm really glad that you're on this self-discovering journey and sort of creative journey of yours, creating this film that you want to bring to the world. I would say just right from a form of genuine, I'm going to create another word, genuineness. Right first and foremost comes from your heart and what you feel. What is the beginning of these characters? What's the story of these characters? What are your characters' wants and needs? Where do you want your characters to be at the end of the film? Where do you want them to come away with? What do you want your audience to come away with? What sort of journey are these characters going on? And what sort of interactions are they going to have along this journey? And then once you have that out, and then you write sort of that's like the meat and potatoes, and once you start to add the garnish, find the genuineness of these characters that are African American. Speak from research, if it's, as you said, from a historical standpoint, research from a historical standpoint, research the times that your film is in and how it connects to these characters and how the characters connect to the time. My playwriting teaching starting to come out.
Wonderful, I'm enjoying it.
Connect to these characters, connect the characters to the time that they're in, and from there, that's the best platform you can do. And look into the fact of, are you adding these, like, as you write these characters and with the knowledge of them being Black characters and having that play along into the film or into your story, taking out the fact that you have a notion of what Black characters are or are like, taking that part out and saying, I don't. So you have the basis of your story already laid out in front of you. Because then and then talk to people, bring it to people who know the story, professors that are on campus, friends that you have, and say, hey, this is the story I'm writing. Can you take a look at it? Can you, what do you think? People that you trust, and say, what do you, be completely honest. What are you thinking? This is where they're going to end up. How do your characters go from the ignition, the starting point of your story, to the climax of your story, to the end of your story? This is where they need to be. This is how they get there. Does the ends justify the means? Does it match up perfectly? And then that's what you ask those people to look at for, and they can, and make sure they'll be, and say, be completely honest. If it's starting to get a little gimmicky, let me know. If it's starting to get a little stereotypical. I made another word up. Stereotypical. Say, hey, let me know. If it's starting to get a little menstrually, let me know. And say, like, this is what I want to write. This is what the premise, this is what I want the story, my film to look like. Can I get my characters there without ending in these categories? And I think from that's the best route you can go, or best route you can take to do that, is to explain that, tell your story from a genuine perspective. But know that it needs research to be that.
Thank you so much.
No problem. I'm looking forward to seeing it.
You'll be the first person I share it with then.
Okay, good.
Great. Rick?
Hi. I have a very specific question. So we'll see if you have anything to say about this, Mr. Moore. What do you make of the white family at the beach in Us that the main family, the African-American family, meet?
Mm-hmm.
What do you make of, because I'd seen Get Out first, I was looking for the little cues, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're little telltale things that we were given in Get Out, right, that were going to be much more significant later.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't think I was getting it there, but I'm just curious, how do you read that particular scene? What do you think about the racial dynamics or the interpersonal dynamics?
Well, I think one thing that we tend to look at in that scene is just communication. And I think communication is a big key. And I think communication gives us sort of, in that particular scene and in that particular film, kind of gives us a little lens of the communication that when Black people are friends with white people, and want to be friends with, and not even just friends, when you're partners with white people, when you're friends with white people, when you have white people in your family, your white coworkers, professors, teachers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, the guise of what comes off from the white, in that scene, from the white family, and then how we accept, again, the sort of comings off of that white family, and how we have to accept and go on. Meaning, when people put their foot in their mouth, how we have to react. We can't just get mad and curse you out, or get mad and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. How we have to, it's sort of the heavy responsibility that we are forced to take upon, or a lot of people take upon in many situations, where they have to, that sort of off-put of, you're my friend, and I really care about you, and I really, I love you, and et cetera, but I know you say stuff like this, or I know you act like this, and et cetera. And I think what that scene was showing, I think, was for, and I would say this, and people can, and people, I would say this is my opinion, that scene was for more white people than it was for Black people to see, when the stuff that you say that you don't think that you say, or that you don't really think about, they say, oh, I didn't really think about that. I didn't think you would get offended by that. Or I say this to my, Black friend, other Black friends all the time, et cetera, that this is something that we have to, like, that's what it looks like. And then that's what it feels. And then that's our reactions to that. I think that was sort of, again, going back to Get Out, when I was talking earlier about those little hidden messages, I think that was a hidden message there. I would sit there and say, like, for white people more than black people to see, like, this is when you say stuff like this is what we really wanna, this is what we really feel, and this is what we really want to do or how we really want to act, as well. So I think that's where my head is at.
I want to take us back to Joy's introduction to the film for a moment. She really talks about the classism aspect as the invisible monster in us. And there's, even though Adelaide and Gabe are a well-off family, they have 2 homes, there's a sense of showiness in the white family that we don't get from our protagonists. And it's a moment where it's an eye-rolling moment, and I think a wake-up call as well to, as you're saying, there's these clues and signals and double coding in every moment of Peele's films. It's there's that sort of unseen class struggle with the yachts and the size of the yachts, but also going back to us when she says at the end, like, she's talking about the work she's had done and said, you of course don't need any, hate you. There's that sense of envy that we get a lot of propelling the action in Get Out, that deification of the body that we see in the earlier film as well. So Peele revisiting, but also adding to his themes with each of his films, and I can't wait to see what he does in the next ones.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jason, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I'm sitting here in astonishment because when I raised my hand 10 minutes ago, I was going to ask about like the main theme of Us because, I think I understood Get Out a little better, and I don't know, maybe I just didn't think about it deep enough, or I didn't watch any like YouTube explanation videos. I kind of do that sometimes when I don't really understand a movie, but it just hit me out of nowhere, and I feel enlightened. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I see like the parallels between like the people who live like on the surface and the people who live below, and I think it's pretty clear. It seems kind of obvious to me now, which makes me wonder how I didn't get it before, but it's just one side suffering like severe oppression, and the other side has no clue that they're like causing this and that they're a huge part of it, and it's just like a clear divide, and I never even realized that, so I feel enlightened right now.
No, I'm glad. Sometimes we watch movies and we have to. Us was definitely one for me. There's a couple movies I've seen where I had to watch more than once, and then even then, like months later, like at like 3 a.m, going, that's what it was. Okay, that's where the connection was too. And I think Us is a really great movie for that. I think there are many things that you can take from it. I think with a movie like Us, there's definitely certain parameters and certain barriers that you have already laid out for you, but I think there's so many more there. So I think whatever you get from it is definitely right on, hitting either right on the head or close to it.
Yeah, I love hearing different interpretations of things, and it's just awesome to see new perspectives.
Great, and thank you, Jason, because that's sort of the whole point of the film festival, is to share these perspectives as part of a community, trying to make sense of these films. So I think you kind of hit it right on the head there. Thank you. Kiara, you had a question.
Yeah, I'm more of a statement. I'm sorry to bring it back so far in the conversation, but I'm kind of going back to what Lauren was talking about and what Mr. Moore were talking about how frustrating it is to kind of hear people make statements like that about like art and things like that. So I work at the movie theater, and when the Korean film Parasite was in theaters, I remember selling so many tickets and then having people come back 15 minutes later and trying to return their tickets because the movie was in subtitles and they couldn't understand it. And I saw the film, and it obviously won an Oscar for the best film at the Oscars that year. And so it was really frustrating to hear people just completely, what's the word? I'm sorry. Just completely like write it off as not being worth watching just because it was from a different culture or because it wasn't predominantly white. And so it's like, I guess people don't really realize how ignorant they're being sometimes. And like, we need more movies like this, like Us, like Get Out, like Parasite, in mainstream American media to show that there can be amazing movies from people of all different cultures, and American cinema is not the best in the world. There can be other things.
Absolutely. No, I absolutely agree. I think, everything that, if you're feeling something, everybody that's in here and that's a student and feeling something, take that with you. So the next time you have class, all the way to your graduation date, all the way to, you get that multi-million, to your first student film, to your first independent film, to your first multi-million-dollar project at a big Warner Brothers company. Take that idea with you into that. Make sure that you're in casting, in audition rooms, or you're talking to your casting directors, you're talking to your producers, like, hey, I really want a Black person as this main role. I really want a Hispanic person as this main role. I really want this story to really highlight and not mock, or this situation, or I really want to bring this in the forefront in this light. Take that idea with you. If you're feeling something, if you saw Us or Get Out or whatever movie it is that you saw, and you're like, wow, there's not enough, or I really feel that this should have been done, or whatever you felt, wherever it was, take that with you into those projects. Take that with you into that. Those feelings aren't only for us. Those feelings aren't only for Black people. They generate from us and they affect us, but the feelings aren't only for us, right? They're for everybody to take that and go, just like I said, I think it was to Lauren before, to say, I really didn't like that you said that, or I really felt uncomfortable that you said that. Speak on it, bring it up, put it into your project, and say, I really want this to be in the forefront. How can I go about doing it? Research and do your work. Just claim that you can do it without doing the research and doing your work, but start on that journey. It's something. Racism is interesting. The idea of racism has become so big and so large in our mainstream society that the cure for it idea of the cure for it has become just as large and and the idea of it being out of our reach has become just as large, when it really isn't. And it's understanding, having the understanding, something's not right here. Something isn't being done that needs to be done. Something isn't happening that needs to happen. I can make it happen. I'm going to make it happen. So there's sort of like, it's like a disconnect between the realization and the cure of it. And it doesn't have to be.
We have a few more questions. Susan?
I just wanted to add something on to what Kiara said, is that I wonder if people who buy the tickets and then go into the movie and come out 15 minutes later, if the only reason they go see a movie is for entertainment value. And I think in the last 10, 15 years, I think there's been a lot of movies that, yes, they're entertaining, but they're trying to tell you something. And I don't think people that do that are willing to listen. So it makes me wonder how many people walked out of Get Out or Us, or, like you said, Parasite, which I thought was a phenomenal movie. But I wonder, these movies that we've had that are trying to bring these really uncomfortable topics up and bring them to the forefront, how many people are just kind of like, I just want to be entertained. But the thing is, entertainment can also be a form of learning new things. So I just wonder, that's really kind of, I just thought of that when you said it about people walking out of Parasite. I'm like, why would you walk out of Parasite? You got to know how it ends. I'm 15 minutes in, all I could think is, how is this going to end? And how could you not know how it ends? But something like Us with the two separate worlds, and and again, I can't speak so great to this because I have not watched the whole thing yet. I'm actually watching it tonight, halfway through it. But the scissors to me really stand out as a big symbolism in Us, the cutting. And yes, it's a horror film of stabbing and things like that, but the idea of cutting yourself out of something or cutting someone else out of something was really, really like just started thinking about that. It's like, how do we inadvertently or mistakenly cut someone and make them bleed? So, the beach scene where she calls her a whore, I was a little appalled by that. Like, I was waiting for her to say something and she didn't. And then I was like, why is she accepting it? And then further on in the movie, I'm at the part where she got out of the handcuffs and is going down the hall with the fire poker. And I'm thinking, well, she managed to get herself out of the handcuffs, so she does have a strong ability here. So why didn't she stand up to that white friend? I'm like, and I just think the scissors are a really big part of that for her. Sorry, that was a little longer than I wanted to say.
Oh no, it's fine. I'm glad you spoke on it.
So just jumping off of what Susan was saying, I'd like to comment on the folklore history of the doppelganger, which typically was ascribed to women because horrible husbands, wives. It tends to be pretty Celtic. They'd go crazy and they'd think that a fairy would swap them out for a less interesting woman or a more angry woman, which is interesting. I think it speaks to Peele's genius in using this paradigm of folklore into, creating a racial situation in Us.
There's a poem that speaks to that doppelganger, actually, and I've been trying to think about it ever since you talk about it, and I can't. It's like a perfect one that fits to that, and it can't. It's not coming to me. But I heard something along the lines of that too. So, but no, I agree.
Great, Mia.
I just wanted to say, like, before even this opportunity to come to the festival, I was never really into horror movies just because of I don't know, I just never really was. But after watching these, I just have found a new appreciation for them. And also, I think in my family, it's particularly hard to have those conversations about ignorance and other things going on in the world. And I just think these movies are a perfect just way to segue into it without being being the awkward one to start the conversation. Because I think on some level, well, just from personal experience, that my parents are just they have very different views than I do. And I just think these just give good examples of what's important to our society, and it just gives us I guess older people, but also myself just a new perspective on seeing things, and just a good way to start a conversation.
These are, most films are good conversation points. I would say that you'd always know a film is good by the fact you can have you want to talk about it after, and the film always gets you, that you want to continue to talk about it long after you see it. And like I said earlier, and again to Lauren's sort of comment, talk about it. Don't diminish your voice to please others, and that's something that you will come to terms with and learn and absorb, that as you grow and as you go on this journey, especially in the realm of movie making and filmmaking, because there's going to be people to say, you know, I don't think they should have done that, or I don't think, you know, your character should have did that. This is everybody who's, you know, especially for those who are writing films now and are working on films now, say, you know, I don't really think your character should do this, or I don't really think your character can do that. You know, always absorb knowledge and conversation, but also if you have a voice, use it. If you have a voice and if you claim to use that voice for other people, then it's not only just your right, but it's your responsibility to do that. You know, despite if it's mom, dad, you know, a partner, a friend, a roommate, a classmate, a professor, you know, if you feel that something isn't right, if something isn't, you know, if something isn't right, if somebody said something that's not right or it's not comfortable, you know, you have the voice to speak up on it, to whatever you feel uncomfortable with. And say, you know, I saw how you treated my friend, and I really feel like that was racist, and I want to bring that up to you and to that, and I want you to feel that I you know, that I saw that, or I just witnessed that, and you know, you don't have to speak on it if you don't want to, but just if you feel you know, if you my general rule is, if the first feeling you have is usually the right feeling you have. So.
Aaron, thank you for that great advice about being human and navigating a particularly fraught political moment, but also being generators of text and creators ourselves. WCI is a writing program, so our students are always creating, and my students are in fact creating original monster movies at the end of this semester. And I just told them on Thursday that I want them all to be Jordan Peele's. Look at the world around them, look at their own experience, and render it through the horror genre. So thank you for all of the advice you're giving to them. It's going to make my job easier at the end of the semester. I appreciate it. We have a few more questions. I'm not entirely sure which of you had your hand up first, Jason or Julia. I thought I saw Julia's first, but Jason, I certainly don't want to shut you down if you have
I mean, I have no idea, so Julia, you can go first. It's fine.
All right, thanks. I just had to agree with, I think it was Mia. I personally, I grew up in a very conservative family, and it was really tough to kind of get out of the whole mindset of what I was brought up to believe. And I know I've personally met a lot of people at my job, because my job is to actually interview and survey people. I've met a lot of people that have the same very tough conservative opinions that they just refuse to change. And I think it is really important to point out as well that it's not just America that's like this. We're obviously at the forefront of all this because we're very divided about the issue right now, but other countries do have the same problems, just not so much as at the forefront as we do. And I think that's also really important to note, that America's kind of more or less leading this revolution. And also just that, you know, the movies were very, I'm trying to think of the word, they were very eye-opening. I know for some people, I talked with them about the movies. I was explaining to them how, you know, the mindsets are of that, you know, your main cast can't be Black, you know, how's that possible? And I would explain to them, it's very clearly possible. It's not as tough as you think. They're just as talented as white people are. And it's just, in a way, it's kind of getting them to just realize that maybe what they've been told is wrong. And there was a very interesting quote. I don't remember who it was by, but it was said that the first thought you think about a person is what you've been told to think. The second thought, when you step back, is what you yourself believe. And I think that holds very true in these sort of circumstances.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Jason?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much to everybody involved in this. I'm only here because of an extra credit assignment in my writing and critical inquiry class, and I only picked this particular discussion because it was about films that I'd already seen, and I never thought that I would walk away from this with so much more understanding. I just thought that we would kind of talk about the movies and maybe I would understand or feel like, yeah, understand parts of the movie that I didn't understand before. But there's just a big picture message that I'm really taking away from this that I never could have thought. And thank you so much. I really am so happy that I did this.
Oh, glad you're here, Jason.
Thanks, Jason. Make sure you come back every year for more, extra credit or not. Tony.
I came in late, so I don't know if this was mentioned earlier, but in the Get Out movie, there was a Asian guy within like the whole white party, and the Asian guy was asking the main protagonist, what are the disadvantages or advantages of being a black person, right? And I found that really interesting because I myself is an Asian American watching this, and I was wondering why Jordan Peele chose a East Asian person, like really specifically East Asian, and it was just I spent a lot of time thinking about it actually because in a whole movie there's one Asian person, it's East Asian, and being Asian American, you kind of know like East Asians are quite racist. Like I mean, not all of them obviously, but it's pretty obvious. Like they're very racist against African Americans or Africans in general, and it's just really prevalent. So I'm wondering if that's why he's fitting it in, or perhaps I don't know.
That could I never really thought of that. That could be a reason. Now I'm thinking about it. That's quite an interesting take on it. Notion. I think just from the interviews that I've seen him talk about, I think there were many purposeful things that were going on in the film. So that definitely could be a reason for sure.
He also could present Chris with a potential ally, and in fact doesn't. He becomes quite an antagonist. In fact, it's a really uncomfortable moment in the film, that question that Tony brought us to. But it almost allows for another big turn in the film when it's after that question that Chris invites Andre / Logan to answer the question of his experience of being Black, knowing that something is off about this character. And Chris doesn't yet know what it is, but he knows that there's something here that's not quite right. And as Andre / Logan is speaking, he raises his cell phone and takes the picture, and the flash goes off. And that moment allows Andre to escape, even momentarily, the sunken place and sort of yell the sort of title, get out, get the fuck out. He says, leave now. Not trying to save himself, trying to save Chris. So that moment with that character who Tony just mentioned, it's a really interesting moment in the film because while it's this incredibly tense moment where he might have had an ally and doesn't, it ends up allowing him to almost solve the mystery and help Andre, who then tries to help Chris. So we are running out of time. I have another question. This idea of a double has come up a number of times in the festival so far. In terms of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, we discussed it as a pathway to freedom. Jekyll is able to behave very differently as Hyde than he could as the good doctor. Last night in our discussion of Night of the Living Dead, we discussed the zombie as revealing truth, not about themselves, but about the cultural tensions of the late 1960s and the dynamics between the characters in the farmhouse and by extension, humans in general. In my classes, we often talk about the monster as the mirror because they don't fit neatly into the boxes that we as a culture or as a species have identified as human. They actually reinforce what it means to be human in all of these ways that we define it. A few days ago, I made my writing students watch the Edison Company's short Frankenstein film from 1910, which ends with Dr. Frankenstein, in fact, in front of a mirror. So for over 100 years, we've seen the idea of the monster as our own double, and it's thrilled and terrified audiences. In his films, among other things, Peele is modernizing this cinematic tradition. So can we talk for a few minutes about how Peele shows us in these films this idea of the double and what it might mean for us as audience members, especially human audience members who are being shown this mirror as we watch these films?
Yeah, that's very interesting. I always love films, horror and otherwise, where they have sort of this double take on what you assume who the character assumes they are and their point of view in the world. I love how it portrays one notion for a length of the film and then turns into something completely different through the story and then through the character to kind of go, well, wait a second, you were like this, or you were supposed to be the good guy, or oh, we thought you were going to be the bad guy. You know, and I love how in Us that's sort of reflected in that. I love how in Get Out, how the girlfriend reflected that of just this good character. And, you know, and it's interesting. I thought that for a while that she was kind of like the odd one out with a black sheep or didn't know what was going on. And slowly you get there, I'm like, I don't know, something might be, you know, might not be it. But then there's sort of that transformation of this scared, worrisome girlfriend to villain, you know, this diabolical person was, I thought that there were some hidden gems in that. And I thought how, you know, how just sometimes we put our trust in the wrong people, and also into, especially for Black people, when we interact with people that we think and that we can rely on and have a connection with, and end up seeing that, oh, wait, you were like this, or, and not so much as a big guise of this big whodunit reveal, but also just like little conversation and communication effects into that. I love, and in Us, it's just we have to face ourselves to come out of this, or to stay alive, or to survive. We have to face and destroy parts of ourselves or ourselves to do that, and then have this big end. You know, at the end of this to be, well, wait, no, this, you know, I'm not going to ruin or spoil it for folks, but have that big reveal at the end and go, whoa, this was really the thing. So I always find that to be very interesting.
We're going to, a heads up to my students, we'll be discussing her in terms of the siren, the classical siren, possibly next week or the one after. Kiara and Susan, you both have questions. Kiara?
Yeah, I just had a question for Mr. Moore. The most profound quote that I kind of took away from Us was actually when the tethered family first meets our main family, and Adelaide asks Red, who are you? And they respond, we are Americans. And I kind of wanted your take on what that could mean, because I guess I was expecting her to say like, we are you, or something like that, but it was more of this broad topic of we are Americans. And so I was kind of taken aback by.
Sure. I you know, that's a really great observation. And, you know, for the longest, as I was dissecting this film from the beginning to the end, you know, especially with the connection with the commercial and how that was sort of like the anchor piece for these, you know, beings, from that, to show that we are you. And I'm going to dig into that mirror piece. I'm sure that there's many, many, many other ones, many more correct ones than what I have, but I want to dig into that reflective piece of classism, of sort of different through the guise of sort of tokenism, especially for some of the Black family classism, for other folks and whatnot. So I'm gonna say that. I'm gonna say it portrays we are Americans. We are true America. This is the American, you know, this is what's under the American dream, or what's sort of beyond, like we're the American nightmare that we don't talk about when we talk about the American dream. Even though I'm sure that there's many, but that's what I kind of came across from that and what kind of like connected for me.
Thank you.
Susan?
I've actually been fascinated with doppelgangers since I read William Wilson, which is an Edgar Allan Poe story, and then you read The Woman in White, and then Lady Audley's Secret. So there's the doppelganger is old, you know, it's an old concept, and I just wanted to connect that to Rose's character with and again, I haven't seen the whole movie, but I saw parts of the ending where she's hanging the pictures on the wall. And to me, it's almost like, wait, she's such a different person. It almost does seem like there's that doppelganger effect happening with her because she completely switches. And I read I was reading Wikipedia, which is not usually my place to go for source material, but it said that Jordan Peele wanted her because she's like, you know, the sweetheart of America and all this. She's so pure looking, and then so many people like didn't get that she was evil. They're like, oh no, she's a victim. She's hypnotized. No, she's evil. And it's like the idea of hidden evil is part of that doppelganger mythology, that the doppelganger is evil, but sometimes it's not the doppelganger that's evil, it's the original that's evil. So I kind of saw that with her character, with that switch at the end, which I thought was really interesting.
I'm going to bring us to this book again, the annotated screenplay for Get Out. Peele talks extensively in his annotations about the movie being contingent on Rose and on Chris and the audience believing her. So that it does derive a lot of power from that. And he discusses over and over again how nervous he was about certain scenes. She has to really be believed as an ally and as his way out in order for the movie to function the way he wanted it to function. And it really speaks to Allison Williams' acting and to his writing and directing that it works, that it feels like you feel your stomach sink with Chris's when we get that reveal at the end. So to his credit, this is all going on in his mind as he's writing and directing this film. To make sure that her mask essentially functions in terms of the double, as you were saying, Susan. All right, so we've hit the end of the time that we've set aside for tonight. Does anyone want to end us with one more question or observation? Aaron, is there something that you want us to take away from this discussion in particular?
Sure. As kind of going to what I said before, well, first and foremost, thank you for joining us for this discussion. I really appreciate it. And I love talking about, I'm a movie buff myself, and I love talking about films and decisions and choices that characters make and directors make. So I really appreciate it. As you go on your journey of discovery and learn and dive into more of roles that people play and different meanings and hidden agendas and genres in film, particularly horror films, and as you grow and learn and see more things that you do like and appreciate and things that you don't like and you aren't so comfortable with, back to what I said before, take that feeling with you. There's nothing, there's no big cure, there's no big, pill you can take or shot you can give than taking that information with you wherever you go. If you were on this discussion and you learned something or you appreciated something that we discussed here, take that with you on your journey. When you make your first film, when you finish the film that you're making for this class, take that with you and put that into the film. There's no bigger step than the first step, and the first step is doing that. To see that, especially going back to what we're saying, you see Jordan Peele make this journey from comedy to horror because he saw something he didn't like, and he saw something in the genre that he loved, that through that there was something he didn't like or he didn't feel appreciative. He didn't feel seen, or he didn't feel heard in this genre. So he took it upon himself to do it. And it's that easy. It's really that easy to take something with you and go on this journey. You're going to have many, 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 many hiccups, make many, many, many mistakes, have many, many, many failures. But from that, you become stronger. You know, from that you grow, from that you evolve and you change. Sometimes the evolution is hard and it's ugly and it's uncomfortable, and you would rather saw off your own arm than go through it. But you go through it, you'll go, and you become something else. And that's the way of life, and that's how life works through whatever journey you take. You know, I started this going, I only want to be an actor and I only want to do this, and that's all I'm going to do. And, you know, from that, I now, you know, have a company where I can give others a platform to do things, and create things as well. And not seeing, when I first started out, didn't see that as a road that I wanted to go on, but here I am. And I found a love for it. And I don't want to say found, but a love grew from it. I'll say that. And, you know, sometimes, and most times, we have these doors in front of us, and the most easiest and familiar door, the most familiar door is the most easiest. And it is. That's just how it is. And it's right there and it's in front of us. And there's not a lot of work to go through. But from that, we remain the same. We stay in the same place. We stay the same person. We see the same things, hear the same things, and growth becomes non-existent. We have to be uncomfortable. We have to be taken out of our element. We have to be stressed and pressured, and you know, and many other things for us to grow and to change. And film is the reflection of the times that we live in. You decide the times, though. That's what people tend to forget. We decide what we do in these times. And as you go through that, take that with you. If you didn't, you know, feeling the great feeling you see when you saw Us or Get Out, take that feeling with you. There's no stopping you from being the next Jordan Peele, as you know, as was said. You can be the next Jordan Peele. You can give that platform to people that don't have one. You can be the next. You can have the next Parasite. You can have the next Get Out or the Us, or you can give the platform to other people to have that. That's something too. You can have the power to open the door for others or help unlock the door for others. That's something to take back with you. And know that in that uncomfortability, or in that uncomfortableness, you may have fight from family members. You may have fight from friends, from partners, from coworkers, from other professors. And know that that's going to happen, but still have that voice for yourself and keep that voice for yourself. And that's something that you have to decide. Not me or any of your other professors or anybody else can force you to speak up and have that voice. Only you can. And the way you do that is to remember you have a voice, and you can use that voice for yourself, and you can use that voice for others. There's no either or. In this one sort of realm, we can have our cake and eat it too, and be voices for others. So there's something to hold on and remember, and know that this journey is a difficult one. It's a difficult one for Black people. It's a difficult one for Black women. It's a difficult one for so many people. And remember that if you have that ability to be that stepping stone, and give that platform, open that door, then do so. And if you claim that, then it's your responsibility to do so, not just say that you do so. And we have a lot of people that do that say that we can and say that we should, but don't do it themselves. So be that, take that extra step, use that voice, speak up, scream, yell, if you have, roar if you got to. Be that monster for something. Be the monster for a reason. So.
What absolutely beautiful advice for college students and educators who are with us here tonight. Thank you so much, Aaron. And everyone, please come back tomorrow at 6 p.m. for a conversation of Todd Browning's 1931 Dracula. Aaron, thank you again for joining us tonight. What a phenomenal discussion and celebration of Jordan Peele's absolutely genius films, Get Out and Us. Anyone who hasn't seen them both, I truly, truly beg you to do so. They are really worth the watch.
Indeed.
Please leave your names in the chat before you go. And anything else that we want to say on the way out, please feel free.